Welcome back for another how-to on Dirt Rally 2.0. Please let me know if you'd like to see more of these. So, in the first how-to for new players I briefly mentioned not to overuse the handbrake and to only pull it for really tight corners. Well, I think this deserves a little more clarification. I will try to explain two things in this. First of all, how a handbrake turn actually works and is executed, and secondly, when to use it and when it will actually be quicker around the corner. Let's start with the technique itself. Pulling the handbrake will gradually lock up your rear wheels. You can use this to initiate a rotation of the car around its vertical axis and break grip at the rear. For this you need to be in the turn, so the actual turning has to be started just before the pull of the handbrake. Otherwise you will waste time and road space by just sliding forward.
30, 3 right, 4 left, don't cut.
So you start to turn in, pull the handbrake, let off the handbrake once you have successfully initiated the desired slide, and then you work with throttle and steering to accelerate out of the turn in the desired direction. The induction of the slide works the same in all cars, but what you can do while sliding heavily depends on your drivetrain. Rear-wheel drive has the least use from handbraking because those cars can induce steep slides just with the throttle, and you can't force pull yourself out of slide. For front-wheel drive it's often necessary to swing yourself around tight corners, as your drivetrain tends to induce understeer itself, which it also does while sliding, so you can lessen the angle of a slide by applying more throttle in a front-wheel drive car. Most use of the handbrake turns have the all-wheel drives. Once you are sliding, you can still apply power to all 4 wheels, which will allow you to force pull yourself along, ideally already accelerating into the departure direction while still in the corner. Look at this 4x4 donut. Such a tight circle, with the inner wheel almost remaining in place, is only possible with an all-wheel drive, because all 4 tires are pulling the road and there is no remaining point with high friction. Overall, it has a lot to do with the timing and duration of the handbrake pull. Pull it just after starting a turn, let off and balance the car around the bend. Once you understood that, the rest is practice, practice, practice.
6 right long, tightens 5.
The timing is absolutely key and it's difficult to master. I still often find myself missing the right time or duration and not sliding around ideally. Maybe just pick out a favorite corner and race it up and down, trying to get it just right. What you want is to maximize the time actually accelerating out of the turn. If you throw the car too late or too fast, you will still get around the bend most of the time, but you will lose time braking with your engine rather than with your brakes. Your brakes are much quicker at decelerating, so use them before entering the turn and throw the car into the bend at a slow enough speed. The moment you are sliding past the apex, you want to be able to be full throttle, just as you would when not sliding. Truth is, I don't get it right most of the time, even though I know how I want the car to go. It is a very split-second timing to get it right. Watch some WRC onboards if you want to see the true masters nailing it. But once you generally got the hang of how to do it, the question remains when to do it. So when is it actually quicker to handbrake turn? General guide here, I would say, if you almost have to stop to drive the turn smoothly, handbrake will be quicker. But it heavily depends on your driving style and which way you are actually quicker. Let's take Spain as an example. There is only one turn in all of Spain where I use the handbrake. If I would pull the handbrake all along those 1 and 2 corners, I'm losing more time than just staying on the racing line and driving smoothly. Here you can see that side by side.
5 right, 60, 4 right long, 60.
But in this hairpin, that is not the case. Here I am losing time if I stay at racing line and not use the handbrake.
Turn unseen, hairpin left, 50.
And that is even true for rear-wheel drives.
Tightens into 2 left.
I would say, if the turn needs first gear on the racing line, it will be quicker with the handbrake. If it can be driven second gear, it will be quicker on the racing drive and just driving smoothly. But as I said, this might be different for different driving styles. I recommend to experiment around a bit and find your own sweet spot, where you can drive the quickest. For me, for example, even on Monte Carlo, I tend to drive racing line through many of the wide hairpins because I'm faster that way. Even though they are hairpins and would suggest maybe the handbrake would be quicker. It is not for me. It also tends to be different for different drivetrains. Just because of the benefits of an all-wheel drive car, I use the handbrake in some tight corners where I wouldn't do that in a rear or front-wheel drive vehicle. It also depends on track conditions, of course. Dry tarmac will allow much more lateral grip for smooth cornering than wet muddy gravel. That's it for specific handbrake corners, but there is one more case where I pull it often. Rescuing a corner. Not exclusively, but especially in all-wheel drive, you can do some nice emergency moves. So if you are too fast in a corner, but only notice halfway in, and you are already too fast for more braking, most times this means a crash. But sometimes you can get away with a rescue handbrake pull at full throttle. Idea here being that you induce a heavy slide and try to force pull yourself onto the road and away from the trees, rocks or cliff. Kinda like sidestepping your velocity vector if we are talking physics. Sometimes it works, and it might be a last resort to prevent a crash. You will still lose time this way compared to an ideal run through the corner. But if you went in too fast already, it's a better solution than crashing. So, hope this was helpful, and don't give up. It is difficult, but feels very satisfying to nail a handbrake turn, sliding just inches away from the obstacle at full throttle. If you want to see a full-scale example of how little handbrake I actually use, even on gravel, maybe take a look at this night run through New Zealand. Until next time, cheers!